After a big emergency meeting in Dubai, the Red Bull team decided that Lawson and Yuki are going to switch their seats starting from the Japan race. This means Lawson had the shortest time ever as a Red Bull driver, only 2 races. But since people think the Racing Bull's car is easier to drive, can Lawson show that it wasn't his fault, but the car's fault? And more importantly, how will Yuki do in his big chance to move up to Red Bull? The biggest news of the 2025 season so far has been Red Bull switching their drivers before the Japanese race. This made Lawson's time with the Austrian team very short and sad, only 2 races. He couldn't make it to the second part of qualifying 3 times. One was for the mini race in China. This shows that Red Bull is still very tough on their drivers. But what's also worth knowing is that even this decision wasn't made for very clear reasons. The boss Stefan was against the idea of switching these 2 drivers because he thinks the problem is with the car, not the driver. This makes us ask a very important question. Will Yuki do great in Red Bull, and can he avoid the same problems that Perez and Lawson had? Even though many people were disappointed with how Lawson drove, there's one very important thing we need to remember. He drove on racetracks that he had never driven on before, Melbourne and Shanghai. Also, the team decided to replace him right before the Suzuka race, and Lawson has lots of experience there because he raced in Super Formula. This shows that there's no doubt he would have done much better than what we saw so far. But time was not on his side, and Lawson has said this himself. But getting fired after only 2 races was definitely very mean, even for a team like Red Bull. It could be that they really liked how Yuki was doing. The Japanese driver made it to the 3rd part of qualifying in every session so far. If his team had made better decisions, he would have probably scored a lot more points than the 3 he has right now. Even so, Red Bull feels like they owe Yuki this chance. But the question is, can this driver actually make a difference for the team, and is the problem really just the car? This is why Lawson might want to stay hopeful. We've seen that the Racing Bull's car looks like it's much easier to drive. This doesn't automatically mean it's better than the Red Bull car. Red Bull has the max factor, but for any other driver, that car is a nightmare. We know this from what Albon said. Now, Lawson will get the chance to race against a much less experienced driver in Hajar. This would give him a chance to make up for his mistakes and score lots of points, just like Gasly did when he got moved down to Toro Rosso back in 2019. Obviously, this is the light at the end of the tunnel for the New Zealand driver, but what we must not forget is that Yuki has been doing amazingly well in the past couple of years. He has fixed all of his bad habits like getting angry and making silly mistakes. Also, there's an important thing we need to look at. This will probably be the first and only chance for Yuki to prove that he deserves the Red Bull seat. If he fails to do this, it would definitely mean the end of his time in Red Bull's family. It would also be a huge blow to his chances of getting a seat somewhere else from 2026 onwards. So saying that he won't be under big pressure is really silly. If you think about the bigger picture, he might be under even bigger pressure than Lawson. His whole career depends on how he will do during this time, which could be as short as Lawson's time. Christian Horner has talked about how Yuki did during the Red Bull test. Even though he first gave a confusing answer that Hajar was faster than Yuki, the Frenchman impressed everyone with his driving. That might have changed a bit now. When talking about what Yuki thought about how the Red Bull car behaves, which can easily be used for the 2025 car too, Horner said, "Yuki did very well in that test with us. It's useful information for the engineers. But we always look at the bigger picture. And there is a picture that we can already create in our heads. Yuki has kind of hit the jackpot because of Lawson's poor start. Red Bull is stubborn about one thing. They need 2 drivers who are going to score points. Yes, the decision to promote a driver who only had 11 races before joining Red Bull was quite controversial. But on the other hand, the Austrian team believes that he had a lot of unused potential because of his lots of experience in other racing series like Super Formula. Still, there is a lot of information available for Red Bull. It seems like they believe Yuki is going to get a lot more speed out of the Red Bull car. Or even better, give them a direction for how they should work on the 2025 version of the car. After the Chinese race, it became clear that the car is nowhere near where it needs to be. To make matters worse for Lawson, it seemed like they weren't going to fix anything soon, but again, all of this isn't necessarily terrible news for Lawson. He would get a chance to prove himself in the team that gave him a chance back in 2023. With a 5-race stint and a 6-race period last year, the potential is still there. It's just the fact that the car acts very differently when you are not named Max Verstappen. This is a serious problem that Yuki needs to understand before he takes on this challenge. Christian Horner has been the first one to talk about what Max likes about how the car behaves. His statement doesn't really give a lot of confidence that Yuki could be out there delivering the results that the Austrian team needs. Explaining more, Horner said, "Max is quite specific in what he wants from a car to make it fast. That is generally a very sharp front end on the car, very sharp turning. Of course, the result of that is it will make the back of the car unstable. That for a driver is very tiring if you've got a loose back end on this car when going into corners, so that is where Max is great. That is where he is able to live on the edge of losing control." Be that as it may, this situation is also putting Max in the spotlight, because he now understands that the team is much more focused on finding a driver who will perform in a car that has its own problems rather than fix the problems themselves. Being a one-man team is not something that the Dutch driver wants. But on the other hand, he doesn't like where Red Bull is currently focusing. Now we have to wait and see whether Yuki will fill the gap that Lawson left. On his home race, he will have a lot to prove in his first race for the Austrian team. The comments about him being 100% ready could easily backfire. It would be quite interesting to see how the team will react if Yuki gets knocked out in the first part of qualifying while Lawson makes it to the third part with Racing Bulls. What this would cause is a huge debate. Does Red Bull have a proper training program and drivers who know how to drive the car? If Yuki fails in his mission, the only one who is left to prove something is Hajar. This is a driver who Helmut Marko had a lot of good things to say about. He talked about the progress that the Frenchman made in the past couple of weeks, where he started in Melbourne and how he picked up the pieces in Shanghai, the 81-year-old side. Let's look at the positive side. Isaac Hajar, who has never driven in China before, is setting incredible times in his second race and he's making no mistakes. Yuki is right behind him, but Yuki is in his 5th season while Isaac is completely new, and then he sets such a time. So far, what he's shown is absolutely amazing. In Australia, his driving was also sensational until the crash, and that can happen. It's happened to others. Success and failure are close together, and we'll see what happens. With all this in mind, what do you think is next for both Yuki and Lawson? And more importantly, do you think that the New Zealand driver will prove himself much better in the Italian-based team than he did in Red Bull? This would prove the argument that the problem is the car. Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, make sure to check out the video that appears on your screen. Right now,